and the headlines start to twist. He's digging through the stories, ooh, finding all the things you missed. Talking Super Bowl ads, old films in modern trouble. If the world's too loud, he cuts it down to the subtle. So turn that down, 'cause you know who's talking. Ooh, if there's truth in the static, Tom Gulley, from where you're looking. Ooh, you gotta dial deep for Gulley. 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 Dial deep for Gulley. You gotta dial deep for Sunrise greets him with a golden crown. Tom Gulley's ready, no time to slow down. His voice a river, smooth and deep. He's got the stories that make the city weep. Walking streets where legends grow. Everywhere he stops, they already know. Tom Gulley goes to town. Oh, he lights it up, never lets it down. Tom Gulley goes to town. He's the man they cheer, the talk of the town. Oh yeah, woo yeah, woo yeah. Barbershop chatter, a wave and a grin. Coffee shop wisdom, let the tales begin. The baker hands him a loaf with a smile. Tom, you're the man who makes life worthwhile. A mic in his hand, the airwaves ignite. He spins a story, he turns on the light. Listeners gather from far and wide. Tom Gulley's words, a city's pride. Tom. He lights it up, never lets it down. Tom Gulley goes to town. He's the man they cheer, the talk of the town. Tom Gulley goes to town. He lights it up, never lets it down. Tom Gulley goes to town. He's the man they cheer, the talk of the town.
When the daylight's fading and the world feels wrong, there's a voice on the airwaves, steady and strong. From the heart of the internet's wild frontier, Tom Gulley's talking, pull up a chair. He's got stories, he's got takes, he's got calls rolling in. From the tales of the weird to the shape of the spin. If you're tired of the noise and the nonsense online, there's a seat in the Gullyverse. Come take your time. The show must go on. The show must go on. With the mic burning bright through the dusk to the dawn. Yeah, whatever goes wrong, the Tom Gulley Show lives on. The show must go on. He's the radio outlaw with a charm so sly. A storyteller's cage. on. The show must go on with the mic burning bright through the dusk to the dawn. Yeah, whatever goes wrong, the Tom Gulley Show lives on. The show must go on. So grab your Dr. Pepper and settle in tight. Tom's firing up the airwaves tonight. Whether chaos or calm, he keeps steering the ship with a quip, a riff, and that gully grip. The show must go on. The show must go on through the static and storms, every dusk, every dawn, from the heart of the net to the edge of beyond. The Tom Gulley Show lives on. Yes, the show must go on.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What's shaking tonight? Let me tell you about the tragic, deadly Indiana State Fair stage collapse. We'll go through everything that happened, and I'm going to tell you who I think is to blame for that. Incidentally, I used to work on all the advertising for the Indiana State Fairgrounds and the Indiana State Fair, so I know these people to some degree. And I'm not going to be nice about it. There you go. Hey, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, all the absolutely free things you can do. They only cost you a click to help out our little show with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing algorithm. Plus, we do have super chats. We do have memberships. You can avail yourselves of those if you'd like to help us out. We do have the PayPal. I loves me the PayPal, because that's where you give the most, I get the most, and Google doesn't get anything. You can see most of that information right down here in the bottom of the screen at what we like to call the begging bar, where I beg for things. And, go to the TomGulleyShow.com, get yourself some merch, do all those things. But mostly share and like and that kind of stuff, because you're popular, you have friends, people appreciate you, and they respect what you say. Share the show, and that'll be fine. We do have some celebrities in our chat room right now. Right here we have the chef. That's right. He is a chef in Indianapolis. I'm sure he's been to the Indiana State Fair. And he's a chef up there in the sky at a big fancy restaurant in the top of a big skyscraper, Indianapolis skyscraper. Let's not get crazy. Would just be a building here in Dallas, but in Indianapolis, it's a skyscraper. Anyway. Well, we might as well get into this. Here's another thing I can tell you about that. Well, I'll get into it in a second, but you're not going to believe it. The Indiana State Fair stage collapse happened on August the 3rd, 2011. Guess who was at the Indiana State Fair with his sister and his nephew on August the 13th, 2011, me. And on one, either my personal Facebook page or the Tom Gulley Show page, there's pictures. I took probably 100, 200 pictures that day. One of the pictures I took was this one right here. Check it out. That is the stage itself. Hours. When we were there, it was actually very nice throughout the day. We left, I think, 5 or 6 o'clock. And it was beautiful. It was a wonderful day, nice and hot like I like it. But that is the stage that would eventually collapse, resulting in the death of 7 people, injuring nearly 60 others. Some were injured permanently. Okay? And you may think, Tom, you're making a whole lot out about this. Why are you getting so, Well, let me just show you what actually happened on that day. And maybe that'll add some clarity. Now you watch. This is the stage. And here we go. Boom. That's what happened. Okay? The sad part is it really really could have been avoided. Not necessarily the stage collapse, but the tremendous loss of life and injury to the people there on that day. As you saw, wind gusts from an approaching thunderstorm hit the stage's temporary roof structure. That stage is not there all the time. It is a temporary structure, and landed on top of the crowd. I'll have more on that in a second. As I said before, killing 7 people, injuring 58 others. Why were they there? Well, they were there for a concert by Sugarland. Now, over the years, the Indiana State Fair has had many, many musical acts. Back in the day, they were big acts. They were popular acts. They were right at the height of their popularity. Over the years, and certainly by 2011, the fair had gotten into a habit that continues to this day of booking acts that used to be popular. The Beach Boys, Paul Revere and the Raiders, the Commodores, people like that. So this was different. This was Sugarland. They were extremely popular at the time. And a country act, which would appeal to the highly rural, crowd at the Indiana State Fair. That's what state fairs are for. People from the city certainly come there, but it's a lot of future farmers of America people, a lot of people interested in trucks and tractors and the swine barn, and that sort of thing. It's Indiana at its finest, all of the corn, a lot of corn. You're going to see corn if you go to the Indiana State Fair. So the deal is that throughout the day, and certainly on the evening of the concert, the National Weather Service issued notices and warnings predicting strong thunderstorms. Strong ones. Okay? Let me just put up. Here's another picture I took on the day when I was there. Thank you, StreamYard, for diminishing me. Like I said, I took a million, Messages about forecasts were relayed to various state fair personnel via an automated text messaging system. So the people in charge were not unaware that, hey, severe thunderstorms could and likely will sweep through this area. Now, at 8 o'clock, okay, at 8 o'clock, this person here, Cindy Hoye, executive director for the Indiana State Fair Commission, she had herself a little meeting. And the meeting was to talk about what effect the weather forecast would have on the 8:45 start time for Sugarland, these fine people. What's doing? Is it going to affect the start time of our concert? And the people at the meeting were informed that the storm was forecast to arrive at 9:15, which would be about 30 minutes after the concert started. And so she wanted to delay the show until the weather had passed at this time. So one of the people there took a message to Sugarland's managers, and they said, well, we'd rather just go on as scheduled, and if the weather gets bad, we'll stop. Now, those managers only knew about rain. This band's performed in the rain before, but they didn't know about the lightning. They weren't told about the wind, and they weren't told about the hail. Hail of 1 inch was expected. They decided to start the show 5 minutes late, 8:50, so the band could warm up. Okay? Now, the warm-up act had gone off without a hitch. They did have a warm-up act that day. So when the decision the band had made got back to Cindy Hoye, executive director, she accepted because she assumed the band had the final say. Let me repeat that. She assumed that the band had the final say. All right? Can you believe that? She believed that these two people who go from town to town performing songs had the final say on the safety and evacuation of the people at her venue. Executive director. We'll get in more into Cindy Hoye in a little bit. I can tell you right now, if in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Field, they received a warning that there was a bomb in the building or a tornado was approaching, they wouldn't march down to the field and ask Daniel Jones, the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, "You're a quarterback after all. What do you think we ought to do?" No, the people in charge of the facility would make the decision. That's how it's done. You don't ask a bunch of troubadours to make the safety decision about an impending storm at your state fairgrounds. Anyway, since the storm was to arrive around 9:15, she figures that, well, there'll still be some time to perform some of the show. Ridiculous. Now, about a half an hour later, at 8:30, Cindy Hoye runs into State Police Captain Brad Weaver, who is kind of an unsung hero. He was concerned that the weather coming up would pose a threat to public safety. And he said, you should just cancel this show. Again, let me reiterate. An Indiana State Police captain is saying cancel the show. Why isn't the show immediately canceled? Oh, I forgot. The people here on Sugarland said what they wanted to do. He also recommended they put together an evacuation plan for the crowd. And Cindy Hoye directs her staff to make preparations for an evacuation. Now, if you are running a state fair that gets 700, 800, 900,000 people visiting it every year, and certainly if you are throwing a music concert that has tens of thousands of people attending, wouldn't you already have an evacuation plan? Wouldn't you already have protocols and kind of, here's what we do in this situation type things? Nobody's saying you can't evaluate the situation as it goes on, but wouldn't you kind of have that planned? Anyway, 9 minutes later, 8:39, the National Weather Service issued a severe thunderstorm warning indicating that hail with a diameter of 1 inch, and winds over 60 miles an hour were expected. For whatever reason, even though the fair officials were getting these texts, that warning was not communicated to either Cindy Hoye or Captain Weaver, who were still anticipating the storm to arrive at 9:15. Some 35 minutes later. Now, let me point out that just to the north of the Indiana State Fairgrounds, about 50 blocks north, was a place called Connor Prairie. It's an old settlement. I've mentioned it on the show before. I won't get into why, but it's an old replica settlement from like the 1800s where they reenact schoolhouse and churning butter and all this other stuff. It's a wonderful place. But they have this wonderful rolling outdoor area. And many times the Indiana Symphony Orchestra performs there, as well as other acts. It's an outdoor venue. It's, blankets on the ground. And they had 6,000 or 7,000 people there for this. The director of that venue, when he got this same warning, he immediately told everyone there to go to their vehicles. Got rid of everyone that was exposed to the outside. Shut down the event. at 8:40, 1 minute after the National Weather Service thunderstorm warning, she dictated a message to an announcer who delivered it to the audience 5 minutes later, 8:45, the time the concert was set to start. The announcer stated a storm was approaching, but the show would go on. Gave instructions of evacuation to buildings in case conditions got worse, but there was no directive to actually proceed with an evacuation. In fact, I'm going to read you the actual announcement. Some of the audience started heading for the exits, not on. Here's the announcement. Here's the announcement that was read. I should read it to you in Cindy Hoye's voice. By the way, I worked with Cindy Hoye on the very first radio commercial I ever did for an ad agency. I've known of or interacted with Cindy Hoye since 1987. We'll get to my thoughts on that in a minute. And if you like to see old Tom not real happy, stay tuned. I've kept this to myself for 14 years, and now the announcement that was read said, "How are you? As you can see, to the west there are some clouds. We're all hoping for the best that the weather is going to bypass us, but there's a very good chance that it won't. So just a quick heads up before the show starts. If there's a point during the show where we have to stop the show on stage, what we would like to have you do is calmly move toward the exits and then head across the street to either the Champions Pavilion, the Blue Ribbon Pavilion, or the Pepsi Coliseum. And then once the storm passes and everything is safe, we are going to try our best to come back and resume the show, which we have every belief that that's going to happen. So please get ready, because in just a couple of minutes, we're going to try and get Sugarland on stage. Have a great show." There's the announcement. And I can tell you without a question, the number one thing on Cindy Hoye's mind is, I don't want to refund one ticket. Having worked with her, I know that was the number one thing. Not public safety. That's my guess. After hearing an announcement that the show was going to continue, Captain Weaver, the Indiana State Police, he's under the assumption that we're going to, get in the process of shutting this down or make an evacuation. He hears this announcement, which he has no knowledge of, that the show is going on. So he goes over to Cindy Hoye and he confronts her and reiterates, hey, this thing needs to be called off. At that point, she agreed, because she's walking around. The last person she talks to is the expert, and that's what she's going to do. She's the executive director. She's paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for just this sort of thing. She's supposed to know what's going on. She's supposed to know if they have any safety plans. She's supposed to be thinking of the public first. No, none of that. Oh, okay, I agree with you. Yes, so what'd you say? I agree with you. 1 minute later, 8:46, that's when the wind gust hit the stage structure, causing the stage to collapse before any evacuation was announced. Sugarland, extremely popular band. People had traveled from all over to see them at the Indiana State Fair. They were up against the main stage in the front. You guys have been to concerts. You know the really rabid fans get right up there. And the stage, as I showed you just a few minutes ago, collapsed. Tammy Vandam, 42. Glenn Goodrich, 49. Elena Bigjani, 23. Christiana Santiago, 29. They all passed away at the scene. Stagehand Nathan Bird, 51. Jennifer Haskell, 22. Megan Toothman, 24, later died in the hospital from their injuries. The scene was chaotic, as you might imagine. Fairgoers were attempting to assist each other. Here's the stage mid-collapse. People in the stands absolutely heroically rushed in an attempt to try and lift the scaffolding and other items. This stuff weighs so much. But they went in and did it anyway. And there's tons of videotape. I actually have some of people being carried out, people being treated at the scene by their fellow concert goers. That's the good news of everything that happened here. There it is the day after. You can see it's just a mangled crush of twisted metal and the tarp at the top and everything else. Absolutely devastating. If you were sitting in the front and to the right where the stage actually did collapse. We have a few chats we should get to. Absolutely get to. Dupa Dupa Doo is here. She remembers when this happened. It was crazy. It definitely was. People saying hi. Goat is here. The chef himself says, but you know, there's more than just corn in Indiana. Well, that's the theme of Indiana Beach, the amusement park up in Monticello. And they've got safety plans there. I guarantee it. One of my best friends is from Monticello. He worked at Indiana Beach. My uncle worked at Indiana Beach for 40 years. Yeah, they got safety plans. Team Brittany is here. Always glad to see her. Saw her in the chat room earlier of the big LawTube show she moderates. She's a big shot. I'm telling you. That's a nice job. She's quite popular. You're a lucky woman. Congratulations. And always very nice. Wished me a happy Thanksgiving. I was very happy about that. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention our banging new song at the start of the show. The show must go on. If you guys didn't hear that, Leon Kennedy outdone himself again. We'll play it again on the outro on the way out of the show. Oh, by the way, if you want to download any or all of the Tom Gulley Show songs, go into the description of the YouTube at the very bottom of all the links. There it is. Leon Kennedy has dedicated an entire page, and all of them have album graphics on them. So, Leon Kennedy, you the man, you the man. Anyway, people saying hi, people saying hi. People saying hi. You know, we do have the most cheerful chat room on the internet, as verified by independent sources. Goat says Danny Dimes. Yeah, Danny Dimes came up a little short this weekend, but it was to the Chiefs, so we don't mind. People saying hi. Team Brittany says, I remember reading about this. I don't know if you were here when I played the video. I reckon I'll play it again for that reason. Let me play this for you all again, and you'll be able to see exactly what happened. There it is. The winds pick up, and boom. Sadly, that graphic is not even sadly, probably for the best, that that graphic blocks what actually happened there, because it was not pretty. Randy says Summer Rose's mom had tickets to go, but she was sick that day. I believe she had third row tickets. Wow. Yeah, to keep that ticket money at all costs. The things I've heard Cindy Hoye say, you know, there was a thing that was going on with the ice skating rink there. They have an ice skating rink. They used to have a hockey team that played there. I don't think they do anymore, but it's open to the public for ice skating. It's the first commercial I wrote was State Fair ice skating, Coliseum Fairgrounds ice skating. And they were changing some policy, and somebody in the room said, well, won't that, is sure everybody's going to go along with that? And she said, the people that matter will. That's who we're dealing with here. That's who we're dealing with. Was anyone struck by lightning with all that metal there? No, there were no lightning strikes. Doopa says, Cindy Hoye's a real jerk. I mean, I feel your anger, Tom. Oh, we haven't even gotten to it yet. Well, that'll be at the very end. Julian Caesar's here with a salute. Says hi, Tom, and everyone. People saying hi. The song is great. Oh, the show must go on song. It's pretty. Leon is cranking out bangers, isn't he? Though, isn't he? Though, isn't it? Well, before we get to the investigation, I hate to do this. Well, maybe this is the mentality of the people that, or the person that saw a deadly storm approaching.
When the daylight's fading and the world feels wrong, there's a voice on the airwaves, steady and strong, from the heart of the internet's wild frontier. Tom Gulley's talking, pull up a chair. He's got stories, he's got takes, he's got calls rolling in, from the tales of the weird to the shape of the spin. If you're tired of the noise and the nonsense online, there's a seat in the Gulley verse. Come take your time. The show must go on. The show must go on with the mic burning bright.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Knock yourself out with that. Let's see here. Yeah, Leon is cranking out bangers. That's what he's doing. Julian Caesar says, I installed a disco ball for just this moment. Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? Anybody would, really. Anybody would. So what happened in the aftermath of all this? A lot of things. A lot of things. Julian Caesar is funny. There's no question about it. The Indiana State Fair Commission hired an engineering firm called Thornton Tomasetti to lead the technical investigation as to why the stage collapsed. That same firm investigated the collapse of the World Trade Center on 9/11, and also if you'll recall this, we should probably do a show on it, the Interstate 35W bridge collapse in Minneapolis. Now, in addition, public safety and crisis management firm Witt Associates was hired to investigate how prepared that the fair was. Policies, safety plans, things of that nature, and their response to what was going on. James Lee Witt, CEO of Witt Associates, was director of FEMA for the Clinton administration. All right. Now, the cause of the collapse, kind of important to go over because then you understand what the wind did to this temporary structure, which you don't have to be, this is a top-heavy structure designed to be that way. It's, that's the way those things are, right? According to the final incident report that was released by Thornton Tomasetti, the failure was due to inadequate capacity of the lateral load resisting system, which was comprised of guy wires connected to concrete jersey barrier ballasts. Okay, what's that mean? Excuse me. If you look at this stage, what's the best picture I have to show it? Probably this is unfortunately the best picture. So the load resisting system, okay, the load is the amount of weight there is to deal with, and a lot of the weight is at the top, all right? That load resisting system was largely comprised of the guide wires, right? And then at the bottom, things called jersey barriers, all right? They're concrete barriers. And these are the things that you see on a highway. They're sort of triangular at the bottom, and then they go straight up to make a small wall of about, 3 feet high. That's a Jersey barrier. It's a thing they use to separate the roads and stuff, right? That was the ballast that they chose. And those were not fixed in place. They weren't drilled into the ground. They weren't, the only thing keeping them from moving was friction with the ground and their own weight, about 4,200 pounds. Okay. Just before the collapse, wind loading, which is, obviously it is exactly what it sounds like. It is the wind creating extra pressure and stress and, force. It caused several of these barriers, not fixed into the ground, to slide or pivot from their original positions. And that allowed the top of that truss structure to lean toward the crowd. And when that happens, then the weight gets distributed all over the place in a manner it's not prepared for. The support columns, which you can see in front of you in this picture, were subject to bending forces. And the structure then collapsed under its own weight. You don't have to be a genius to know that when you set up something that's supposed to hold the weight and then you tip it to the side a little bit, it can't hold the weight anymore. That's what happened here. Yeah. Those Jersey, and this investigation found, by the way, that those Jersey barriers, in the manner that they were arranged at the time of the collapse, they could only resist winds from 23 to 43 miles per hour, depending on the direction. But the actual wind speed was 59 miles per hour. The building code, Cindy Hoye, executive director, knows all about building codes, obviously. She runs a state fairgrounds. Yeah, the building code required the structure to withstand winds of 68 miles per hour. Clearly, that wasn't done. Now, if I'm the executive director of the state fair, any structure that is up on my property, I am going to get someone from the state to come in. And by the way, it's part of state government. The state runs it. Indiana State Fair Commission. You could easily get somebody from the state who's in charge of that sort of thing to be in the meeting when you talk about the stage that you're going to set up, that could say, this needs to withstand this much wind. Here's how you do it. I don't think that will. An engineer, basically. Right? Now, even if the ballast had been sufficient, even if those Jersey barriers were A-okay, the structure still would have failed because the sort of synthetic webbing, ratchet straps, and wire rope used as the guy wires, they would have been loaded way past their capacity. Those guide wires, it could never have hoped to hold the 70,000 pounds plus the inertia of that stage collapse. By the way, the fin plate connections that attached the guy wires to the top of the truss structure, those also would have failed. Yeah. Now, there were a number of other procedural factors in the design and the construction and the inspection of this whole thing. The catalog provided by structure manufacturer James Thomas Engineering didn't contain enough information to properly design the structure. Well, that's on the people putting the structure up. There was no engineering review of the Sugarland rigging plot before it was affixed to the structure. What's a rigging plot, you say? It's the lighting. It's a blueprint of how they're going to put up the lighting and all the stuff in the scaffolding, which, given the nature of this, yeah, that's true, but those lights aren't heavy enough to bring down a structure like this. There was no engineering review of the structure after it was put up by Mid-America Sound Corporation. There was problems with the installation. They deviated from the directions of the original manufacturer. The state of Indiana governing code waived important requirements for temporary structures such as that one. The Indiana State Fair Commission staff did not have the appropriate knowledge about the structure to evaluate its use during the fair, which is a big problem, especially if you're the executive director. If you don't know that stuff, you get somebody who does. Now, here's the second part of this. Let's get to your comments first, because this is where I'm really going to ramp up. I got to tell you. People saying hi. People saying, oh, hello, Gullerinos. Gilman, good to see you, brother. People saying hi. Pepsi isn't as strong as Coke either. I know. It was weird. When I first started on that account, I was also working for Coca-Cola. So we were for Coca-Cola, and then we had the Pepsi Coliseum. It was a tough time to be alive. Let's see here. Gilman says, you two Dupas still in shock over the Dallas game? Hey, man, I saw Dallas was down 21-0 at halftime, and I went, I'm not watching any more of this. They're just going to get creamed. Little did we know the Eagles would score no more. Julian Cedars, it doesn't seem like intuitively, it looks like the structure isn't quite right. Peculiar how it looks like that sort of thing will fall. It does. Dupa says, same here. They are still in first place. I'm hoping for home field advantage. Julian, exactly. Team Brittany says, oh, wow, so just an accident waiting to happen. It sounds like, oh, you ain't heard nothing yet, sister. Remember, Witt Associates is going to evaluate the readiness, the preparation, all that good stuff. And why is my head getting chopped off? I'm not in favor of that. It's a beautiful haircut here. It's a mess, actually. I'm getting it cut this week. Several issues were found with the level of preparation, preparedness, and actions of the state fair officials on the evening of the incident that contributed to the number of casualties. State Fair Commission had taken some steps to prepare for an emergency, but the overall state of preparedness was not adequate for an event the size of the Indiana State Fair. Thank you, Cindy Hoye. The Indiana State Fair Commission also lacked formal protocols for delaying, postponing, or canceling a production. And even so, if you're the executive director and you're in charge of these things going off without a hitch, don't you say to yourself, I've been involved with the organization of elementary school carnivals that know here's what we're going to do if this happens, if that happens, if the other things happen. She didn't know any of that. None of it. And she left it up to the singers. Yeah, let's leave it up to them and their people. Not us, her making the money. Not us, they got all these people here. No. As a result, it was not clear who had the authority to make decisions regarding the concert. It's clear to me. Whose property is it on? End of the discussion. Weather forecasts were not promptly communicated. If you're doing an outdoor concert at the Indiana State Fair, if you're holding the Indiana State Fair, it's Indiana, tornadoes, strong thunderstorms can happen at any time. It seems to me like when I got into work that morning, every morning during the 10 or however many days of the State Fair there are, I'd go, Blanche, you're in charge of the weather today again. If anything crazy's happening, you let me know immediately. And that would be part of their deal all day. Well, as you might imagine, several lawsuits were filed after this all happened. In 2014, 3 years later, the largest lawsuit representing multiple plaintiffs and multiple defendants was settled for $50 million in damages. In that lawsuit, the state of Indiana settled for paying $11 million. The other defendants settled for paying the balance of the $50 million, $39 million. However, defendant ESG Security, who lost one of their employees, that stagehand, let's see here, Nathan Bird, they denied liability and didn't settle. And 4 years later, on September 14th, 2015, they won a summary judgment and were dismissed from the case. And they were the only defendant dismissed from the case via the summary judgment process. Now, let me just tell you something. You in your own minds know, and you can think of in your past situations where a company or a coach or even Richard Milhouse Nixon have said, you know what? I might think I'm good at my job. I may have been good at my job, but this situation is untenable. I need to resign. Well, Cindy Hoye tendered her resignation, and this genius, Mitch Daniels, said, I'm not going to accept your resignation. I refuse. This was an act of God. Did you hear everything I just said about how this thing went down? Act of God, only in the sense that God created Cindy Hoye and sent her down to browbeat and micromanage people in the Indianapolis advertising, marketing, printing community, and many others, I'm sure. Those are the only ones I have knowledge of. Can't imagine that stops at one point. Incidentally, when you resign and somebody says, well, I refuse your resignation, you get to just say, I refuse your refusal. This is a right to work state. If we have a contract, great. I'm not coming into work. You can keep paying me. And when it's over, we're done. Or we can just terminate the contract right now, but I don't have to go back to work for you. I don't just because you say I do. Guess what? Cindy Hoye, this happened in 2011. She still works for the Indiana State Fair Commission. She's supposed to retire in March. You want to know how much Cindy Hoye was making in 2022? $250,000 a year. You know how much she made the 2 previous years? $200,000 a year. I can't imagine her salary went down in 2023 and 2024. It's now 2025. If you add those all up, that's $1 million right there. Hope you're happy. This is a person I have heard say some of the most mean-spirited, petty things in my life. Remarks about vendors. One of her acolytes told me, and this was in 2014 or 2015, I was telling her, well, you guys don't get the big acts anymore, you know. It's not like it used to be. And she said, we can get anybody we want. And I go, you can't get Katy Perry to work an outdoor venue in Indiana? Are you kidding me? We'll make her do it. These people are just, because they live in Indiana and they have a lot of power in Indiana. You know, if you're printing the brochure for the Indiana State Fair, that's a big account. You're printing 500,000 or more brochures free that they hand out, right? And you're getting sponsorships. You're doing all that. They've gotten drunk with power. They think, oh, we really run this place around here. No, you don't. You think Katy Perry is going to come to the Indiana State Fair when she can go to some indoor arena somewhere, get paid 5 times as much? People ask me all the time, why did you leave Indianapolis? People like Cindy Hoye are a reason why. It's small time. It's really, really rough on creative people. They don't even see a need for creativity in anything. The number of years and ways I tried to get on the radio in Indianapolis. Oh, no, I was on the radio in Indiana. I mean, if you turned your radio on, you could hear me, but I wasn't in Indianapolis at a big station in Indianapolis. I was on the outskirts at a station there that broadcast into Indianapolis. And man, I worked for the ad agencies. So down the hall from me were the women that bought media from the radio stations, who could have easily said, hey, give this guy a show. We'll throw some money at it. Now, they did it for their friends who wanted a gardening show or something like that. That's how small time they are. Next step, move to another giant city. Boom, you're on the air immediately. Move to a top 5 market like here in Dallas. Boom, on the air immediately. How's that work? Cindy Hoye wanted all the power and all the weight to throw around in being the executive director. She didn't want any of the responsibility. And when push came to shove, she spent too much time being a megalomaniac with those who worked around her and wanting her ring kissed and things of that nature. And she didn't have enough time to make sure that the structure was sound. She didn't have enough time to make sure she had a safety plan. She didn't have enough time to have a clearly stated protocol for weather emergencies. You know, I worked at a school system in Wayne County, Utah, and that's a place that has 2,400 people in 2,500 square miles. And none of those schools has more than 200 kids in it of the 3 schools. None of them. But the elementary school had a clearly stated weather protocol. When it's below this temperature, we don't go outside for recess. We go into the gym. So that every day there wasn't a big, giant discussion, you know. Hey, what are we going to do? Should we go out today? I don't know. Is the wind blowing? Is it blah, blah? No, when the air temperature, that includes wind chill factor, is below this, we don't go out. If it's above this, we do go out. That's it. Discussion over. They didn't have that. So I thought the band had the final say. You thought Sugarland and their managers had the final say about the safety of the people on your grounds. Are you insane? And you have the gall to keep your job for another 15 years. Raking in the big bucks off the state's money, off the taxpayers' money. 7 people were killed on your watch, and you with a straight face can walk back into work and go, I deserve to be here. Anybody in the chat room had 7 people die on their watch? Because I guarantee if you did, you wouldn't have the job anymore. Creativity is frowned upon in Indiana. It really is. Anybody who's famous for being creative from Indiana, and there are many people, got that way by leaving. Kurt Vonnegut, Michael Jackson, David Letterman. You don't, John Cougar Mellencamp, you don't get famous in Indiana for being creative. You don't. I know a singer, and she's been on my podcast, who, if she moved to a big city, you'd all know her name now. Stayed in Indiana. Now, she might be kind of famous in Indiana, but not nowhere else. Julian Caesar says this was marathon weekend here in Philadelphia, and the crowd control and traffic control was astonishing. For me, who was just trying to get across the city on my bike, regulations written in blood. Brittany, hey, let's rebuild the stage again with Legos this time. Gilman said Great White's manager got sued, but it was a small club with outdoor pyrotechnics. Well, that's a whole nother fiasco of, the club shouldn't have even had that type of, there's a million mistakes made in that one. Dupa says, Julian, did you make it across the city? Julia says, Dupa, I made it before I froze. By the way, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. Man, those things are all free. They don't cost you a cent. And they super, super help me out. And with the algorithm, the almighty, all-knowing, the algorithm would have known to close down the event. When an Indiana State Police captain tells you we need to cancel this right now, you cancel it. Period. Why else is he there? Are you afraid somebody's going to steal your purse? Ridiculous. Dupa, I made it before I froze. Just ridiculous. And there's Mitch Dan. This was an act of God. No. I believe personally that Mitch Daniels, A, said it was an act of God, and B, didn't want her to resign because of the legalities. That's what I think. I think he looked at that situation and said, if we say this is an act of God and we keep everybody in place, it's a not our fault thing. And that's what I think. We need Great White added to the list. Do you want me to cover that? All right. You got it. You got it, man. You got it. Great White. There you go. Julian Caesar says, I used to work at a concert venue when I was in school, and the stagehands union would tell people, no, we can't do that. They always did the same things, so there were no ugly surprises. Well, yeah, that's what you do. When you're, it's a 10-day event. You got 355 days throughout the rest of the year to meander your way around some safety regulations and protocols. Incidentally, some other similarly designed stages had collapsed in the year or two prior to this one. How did they collapse? Wind. I guess she didn't read the trades. But the act of stupidity came before the act of God. You got that right. Team Brittany, you're right. Everyone say goodnight, Gracie. Good night, Gracie. You have a good evening there, Chef. I can't get past that picture. It looks like something will fall over. Good night, Gracie. Have a good night, Chef. Now, this is a picture that I took during the day there. I took many others, and I actually forwarded them to the state of Indiana and said, this is what was there earlier in the day. Now, I can't say for sure because it's obviously not right when the whole thing started, but some of those lines don't look super, super great to me. But yeah, I also worked for the Hoosier Lottery. It was a big day. It was a big day for my former clients. By the way, in 1963, there was a gas explosion at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. I could also cover that. That killed 81 people. I am going to cover that. Yeah, I'm going to cover that. And that's one of the things I'm going to cover here on the show. Because I covered things. I'm assuming this is Michael Gardner. He says somewhere in the back of Tom's old desk there are a few loose stage pins. Boy, the hot comedy never stops when Michael Gardner's around, I'm telling you. Just never stops. It's a laugh riot. Anyway. They're still searching for the tall fugitive who greased the Jersey barriers. You're smiling. Good. 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 That's great. Smile your 57th ranked law school smile. I'm not smiling because the fact that this happened, someone was allowed to keep their job and then just continued being a complete none of the words that I can say are very nice. A repellent, self-important, vindictive person to people right along the way, like nothing had ever happened. Team Brittany is waving to Michael Gardner with her purple hand. That's the purple-handed wave. Highly sought after badge of honor. I made coffee for the show. And I must have been in a Starbucks mood. You know how when you get a Starbucks coffee, it's like, okay, I've got my Starbucks coffee. I'll now wait an hour to drink it because otherwise it'll scald the inside of my... You know that? When that happens? Incidentally, the link is up at the top of the chat, as always. If anybody wants to actually chime in, you don't have to turn your camera on. You can just put your avatar up and talkie. It's painful. We have a protocol for hot coffee here at the Tom Gulley Show. We have a protocol. This still incenses me to this day. It really does. And if I didn't know so many people personally that had to deal with Cindy Hoye and whose livelihoods to some degree may or may not depend upon dealing with Cindy Hoye, and hearing her and seeing her actively and her acolytes wanting to blackball people, wanting to get them fired from their jobs. When they did their jobs properly, the fair screwed up on something, or numerous other people did, but they point at that art director or they point at that creative person and go, that person needs to be fired. They hosed me over. Didn't say hosed. No, they didn't. They did what you asked them to do, and an account executive, all of your staff, the printing company, everybody else approved it. But you want that person to not have a livelihood anymore. That's who that person is, Cindy Hoye. And even if I'm wrong about that, let's just say I'm just a vindictive person myself and I'm not nice and all that other stuff. I'll tell you some empirical facts. Fact, Cindy Hoye was the executive director of the Indiana State Fairgrounds and the fair. Fact, on her watch, 7 people were killed. Fact, she didn't just resign. They went through the play pretend of, I'm resigning. No, you're not. Okay, I'm not. Fact, she was told by Indiana State Police Captain Weaver that this should be canceled now. She went ahead and issued an announcement. The show's going to go on. We hope we don't get rain, but there's a chance we likely will. And if that happens, do this. But we'll start up as soon as possible. We'll, have a great show. And he's going, what's going on? I thought I told you. Shut it down. Had she listened to him? There's also a story about her almost stepping on a live wire or something when it was raining, and he prevented her from doing that. Whatever. Julian Caesar says, I was on a bridge that was swaying back and forth. It's sobering. It is. Oh, go. Thank you so much for the super sticker. $3.99. Appreciate that. Tom, do you remember the collapse of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge? I do remember that. And I also remember there was a bridge just down the way from it that did not collapse, that had the same design and same everything else. It just wasn't as heavily traveled, and they went ahead and shut it down too. That particular bridge had a very interesting design, and basically it was suspended by these big, thick metal pieces that at the bottom had a circle that there was a pin bolt through it. And over the years, corrosion, etc., one of them got a crack in it and broke. And when that broke, it was all over. All over. There's a good documentary on the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Am I being tasked to write that down? Okay, Sunshine Skyway Bridge. It's on the list, folks. It's on the list. Team Brittany says that was a scary day. Tons of cars dove right into Tampa Bay. Yes, they did. They certainly did. They most certainly did. Tampa Bay has those 3 long bridges. I forget. Is one of them Carpenter? There's 3 of them. That if you're driving around in Tampa, that you might have to drive on a bridge that goes a long way over the water. But any old ways, we probably ought to shut this baby down here. Like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, please. It only takes a second. It only costs a click. It helps us with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing algorithm. And I guess the AI, maybe. We always want to be in good stead with the AI, even though I hate it. And then super chats, memberships, the PayPal. It's in the description. It's down here in the begging bar, but it's in the show description. And that's where you give the most and I get the most. Everybody wins there. Google don't get to take nothing. And we got a merch store at thetomgullyshow.com. Hopefully you'll find some things there that you like. Although you could wait until the holidays. I bet you there'll be sales and stuff. I try to tell you when I get the emails about the sales, but sometimes I forget. There's always something on sale in Cafe Press. Have a good night, folks. We'll do our best. Mr. Sitting there smiling. Okay. Oh, man, have we told you about these amazing songs that Leon Kennedy is writing? Man, oh, man, if you go into the description of the show, at the very bottom of all the links, you can click that baby and you can download, because people have asked me, all of the songs he has done for the Tom Gulley Show. He keeps just topping himself. You know, they just keep getting better and better and better. And I think this last one is the very best one yet. So I guess, without further ado, I'm looking at that old clock on the wall. And it says that, like the Reverend Al Green, I got to get up on out of here. Just trying to grow this show, folks. We're just trying to get more people to hate it, you know. Again, nobody used our link. I post the link. Nobody's even come in here and trolled me, which is, you know, whatever, man. Julian Caesar says, thanks, Tom. Chatters, thanks everyone else. Anyway, so Cindy Hoye's to blame. There's your answer to the question. I did a thing on YouTube. It's privated now, which was a fictitious interview between Larry King and Cindy Hoye. Maybe I'll play it tomorrow or some other time. Anyway, this song is going to be awesome. You're going to love it, so you should stay and listen. It's only 2 minutes and 41 seconds. It's the best one yet. And with all that being said, Sorry, I'm taking this down. With all that being said, I think the only thing left to say is, till next time. Oh, what's tomorrow on this show? Hold on. Hold the phone, everybody. I got to tell you what's on the show tomorrow. Just give me a second here. Just bear with me. I'll tell you what's on the rest of the week. Oh, tomorrow is Albert Dryden, a guy that wanted to build a building. His local town council said they didn't want him to build the building, and they went there and had TV crews with him, and very bad things happened. On Wednesday, heading into Thanksgiving, yes, our topic is gravy. It's gravy. You're going to salivate. It's all about gravy. And then on Friday, because we're going to skip Thanksgiving, I might do a surprise pop-up show on Thanksgiving, but there's nothing scheduled. The Mystery of the Yuba County Five. The Yuba County Five. 5 men who vanished. Only 4 of them were ever found. By the way, they were not found in a very good condition. Just put it that way. Granny's not calling from the dead? Which granny do you mean? If it's the granny I'm thinking of, I know you died. Anyway, with all that being said, check out this awesome tune. And I mean, it is awesome. You're going to love it. Till next time, we'll see you next time.
When the daylight's fading and the world feels wrong, there's a voice on the airwaves, steady and strong. From the heart of the internet's wild frontier, Tom Gulley's talking, pull up a chair. He's got stories, he's got takes, he's got calls rolling in. From the tales of the weird to the shape of the spin. If you're tired of the noise and the nonsense online, there's a seat in the Gulley verse. Come take your time. The show must go on. The show must go on. With the mic burning bright through the dust to the dawn. Yeah, whatever goes wrong, the Tom Gulley Show lives on. The show must go on. He's the radio outlaw with a charm so sly, a storyteller's cadence and a wink in his eye. From the ghosts in the attic to the news of the day, Tom breaks it all down in his signature way. He's the king of the ramble, the lord of the yarn. He'll take you from evening straight through to dawn. With callers so strange you'd swear they're a bit, but Tom never wavers, he just rolls with it. The show must go on. The show must go on. With the mic burning bright through the dust to the dawn. Yeah, whatever goes wrong, the Tom Gulley Show lives on. The show must go on. So grab your Dr. Pepper and settle in tight. Tom's firing up the airwaves tonight. Where the chaos of calm, he keeps steering the ship with a quip, a riff, and that Gulley grip. The show must go on. The show must go on. Through the static and storms, every dusk, every dawn. From the heart of the net to the edge of beyond. The Tom Gulley Show lives on. Yes, the show must go on.